Hey, so today we'll be watching Ōoku of the Inner Chambers, episode 1. And I remember I first heard about this series a couple of years ago, I believe, when I was scrolling to the historical fiction section in the website Right Stuff Anime. But just going based off the synopsis on a few of the volumes, I wasn't really too interested in it. At first, I was, but then I forgot what exactly that made me not as interested in it as I was initially. But now that it's an anime series, I figured that I might as well give it a try to see if I do end up liking it overall, and then maybe I'll read the manga series. And I'm unsure if it's just a manga series or if it also has a light novel series. However, at the very least, what I remember about the series, it's basically just about a what-if scenario in ancient Japan, where what if there was a disease that killed off a bunch of males and only a select few were left. And of course, being that there's only few males left and there's a bunch of women, the women themselves rule. And it's basically about a woman having a bunch of male concubines and the intricacies of being a leader and having all those males around vying for your attention. And I suspect maybe vying for each other's attention too. Now, having said all of that, on to the episode. Ooh. Never speak of what you see or hear inside the Ōoku to anyone, not least to your parents or siblings. Oh, a bear? Oh, shit. Oh, it has rabies. Oh no. Jesus. Was it because of the mushroom? Or more likely it was from the bear? Damn. Whoa. Oh, that makes sense. Huh. Okay, CGI. 3,000? Isn't that a bit much? They're scarce as it is. It just seems greedy at that point. Idiots. I mean, it couldn't hurt. No, it really is reversed now. Oh wow. Damn it. The innocence of this relationship is gone. Got everybody but her, huh? I don't think she wants it like that, man. Out of necessity? Well, that's sad. A man whore. Yeah. Sure. Oh, please, you're not like Buddha. Oh, Granny. He's been picked, hasn't he? Oh, I love it. Really is reversed. Damn. Oh wow. The bar is low, but he's still grateful. I wish to become a concubine. Oh wow. I don't think you're pretty enough though. Get long hair maybe. Oh. Or maybe he already has long hair. Oh, that's in a way I guess considerate. Oh my god. Oh wow. Oh. How are they able to not get sick though? It was so rampant before and now it doesn't seem like it is. Ooh, groom of the bedchamber. See, now he does look pretty. There's no way she could see all of them. Oh, okay, yeah, that does seem a bit more believable, I guess. Wow. And they're doing traditional women work too. Oh. Early 40s. No, he does have pretty eyes, but I mean, besides that, I don't know. That's probably a hazing tactic. Oh. Oh. Haha. How much of that is true? Although since they can't leave, or at least very rarely, they really wouldn't know what's going on outside. Similar to Mio from My Happy Marriage, they come from supposedly prominent families, but they know how to do most things that probably people from their ranking wouldn't. I thought that was a woman. Oh. What? He dodged you guys. How is that comfortable? No, not these three again. The hell are they doing? Oh, hell no. Oh, no. Oh, God, that's gross. You can't tell me nobody else hears this. They just probably ignore it. Whoa. Who the fuck wouldn't be? Whoa. Well, yeah. It looks like not even men are safe from other men in there. That probably happened to him, maybe. But willingly or unwillingly, that's the question.
旦那だけですよ。私ももう年だし、神様仏様、どうかややが。
Oh, so she is young.
先ほどの金魚鉢の何の役にも立たぬ。鉢の中でただ飼われていることが仕事なのだ。男たちを無駄に囲い、貴重なけれどその無駄こそがこの世の生
And what happened to the older lady?
そうじゃ。大奥自慢の鳥の日のそう。水。大変ご無礼つかまつりました。
Oh, wow.
逃げおせたというではないか。道場で誰ぞと打ち合うてみとうはないか。足が許す。おそらく相当の使い手と見たが。
Oh.
技量しかとわしに見せてみよ。
今のがお年寄りの藤波様。もうお三の間の新参者の聞いたぞ夜中の大立ちま。端から素手でとか。このように美しい顔で大きくなってるぜ。そう。
See, now that's a pretty man. He's probably not gonna be happy about that. That's true.
拙者の実家は三人ぶちの御家人の中でも
Oh, wow.
抜け出せるところが向こうにこんな力仕事も古参の者たちに手ごめ
Because he was so used to it. Which is fair.
生きていけない者たちもいる。
9年4月30日、大将軍家継はついに既得状態。
どうやら次期将軍は既得の折に吉宗最初に登場されたの。立候補の美醜継ぐともカゴの用意もできてなかったところでは、衆側はあらかじめわざと遅らせたのだとか。孫は怖いの。で身体眼気、久しぶりに多くも活気埋将の方に選ばれた吉宗公は自ら部な。そういえば
翌日5月1日、将軍家継は死去。徳川
お買い取りでございます。お買い取りとはこの手で買い取って歩きますので、衣服は無用。州ではいつも木綿の小袖ですが、ごくごく質素にとの守り申し上げたつもりでございます。これ以上の粗末なお召し様のご意向に傷がつく。ここは紀州のいない。
Oh, wow.
本日限りで西南の折、釣りごとに関わろうという人間を身にまとうこと。
Damn.
やらそちも頭のおかしい者たち、そのような人間にそば用にいとまを取らす。下がれ。元先代のそば用人は全員罷免するつもりだったからな。そば用人というお役目自体を廃されるおつもりで。その通り。そしてその代わりに御用取り次ぎとヤシと老中たちの取り次ぎ役を務めても、あの面倒な大奥の連中とも渡りを。あ、それは大変なお役目で。何を能天気に笑うておるのか、久みたい。
Oh.
お前が私の幼馴染脳がある。
Hmm. I like her.
ただし俸禄は少ない。なんだって来月まで大奥への総触れはなす。
She doesn't have time for men.
そもそも将軍が大一度の総触れもないという今の事態も
でも永遠に来ないというわけで。
当たり前じゃ。
またのどなりって王宮ってびっく
対上様は何をお考えか。
この国の行く末。
Yeah.
それがしをお中老にでございますか。
Whoa.
いえ、
That was quick.
先日の道場での打ち合いが甘い地に負けた鶴岡が表使い、それ以上の役職につけないわけには。
お中老とは将軍と御台所の身辺、つまり側室が出ることになる。大奥においては
ご側室候補に押すつもりなるかもしれない。達人、力士と相撲を取って藤波様より
Oh.
お運びしましょう。旦那様。旦那様。
It's probably one of them.
ご出世誠におめでとうございます。それで
Mm-hmm.
気にしちゃいねえよ。それより用が終わったんなら帰ってくん。
それは私めのことをお許し。
Say no. Damn. He should be. You judged his clothing the other day.
お中老は7名、いずれも器量よしの若い
I don't see it.
中でも柏木は
Kashiwagi, I kind of see it.
であった。
この度水野様の上下を嬉しくてのはおりません。実は私も
Aww.
さあどの様にはこのようなはっきり色はこちらの黒
I didn't like hers.
にいぶし銀で竜背中に大きく。
おお、いいじゃねえか。あとはおめえに任せる。
申し訳ありません。
It's just one needle. I mean, does he have a choice?
机も何もかも脇に寄せて部屋の
I see. This way, every part of that room is covered. Oh, okay, because they would have spent the entire night looking for it.
っていたよりずっと面白い男だったよ。
Hmm.
お前を吉宗様の第一の側。
藤波様の古田抜きが
仕立ても丁寧で、さすが大奥のおは
おまん好みという昔の図案がさに頭に浮かびましただけのことで。
ん
あ、いえ、おまんの方はその昔家光公の大変趣味の良い方であったと聞いております。
おめえに渡そうと思ってたのだって、タバコ。
何も、ただ
Your affection.
思い出を。
許せよ、ノブ。
It's one heck of a memory.
そして朝から
Was she coming to visit finally? He certainly stands out,
なんだこれは。
but he'll stand out among all the fancy ones. Mm-hmm. It actually looks really nice by comparison.
なんとまあ石物向こうに箱が見えるがばかり使う。
It looks uncomfortable.
上様。
ああ、大事ないぞ。今笑うたやつ。
それがしでございます。誠に申し訳ございませんのはそれがしでございます。
You know that's not true.
そこの黒い髪者。おお、おじけのない良いった男のようだな。
Very manly face.
吉宗が今少し布の上下の流水が銀紙で刺繍され、
恐れながら水
水野か。
しかし吉宗は昨日はただ水野の衣装
But what does it matter if it's like a silver thread?
しかと受けたまわりま
Does that mean he's been chosen?
俺が
Oh, there was someone. You're required to be of all of them, aren't you?
ご内証の方とよですが、そ
What? Oh shit. It's a pretty dark custom. Is it an accident or oh. I mean, could he really refuse? Ah, so he really wasn't a good guy.
藤波様は初めて
Yeah, why didn't you? Might as well. Oh, wow.
5つ半頃である。
The fuck? What? With an audience? I don't know what the fuck. God. Uncomfortable. Well, I guess to make sure they actually do it. There will be nothing tonight. Yeah, that's just weird. Well, she doesn't seem opposed. Oh. Oh no. I knew it! Oh. Oh my god, everyone was like, what? Yeah. What does it matter anyway? He's gonna die. No, taking initiative. He's not really gonna die, is he? No, considering he's gonna sleep in peace forever after this.
調べてほしいことがある。
It's not gonna happen, is it? It's gotta be stopped, right? He's not dead! Oh, thank God. They're gonna get a new name or what? Yeah. Is that what normally happens or not at all?
何でも薬種問屋。
Oh. Wow. Oh. That's so nice. Oh. Traveling. Yeah, men are scarce as it is. Exactly. We're like-minded. Shogun, thank you. Oh, I almost want to cry. Died that day. She looks like a man. Oh, okay, that's why. Ooh, Dutch. Oh, wow. Ooh. Why is that an imprudent question? What? Yeah. Ha! He admitted he doesn't know why. It's just protocol. So it's the president then. Damn it. I'm loving this series. Hmm. Who opens those? Who shakes the bells? I want to see. About wearing black. Oh, that's why she was impressed. I thought she was impressed by their looks. Of course, it'd be the simplicity of it.
他でもない皆にいとまを出す
Oh my god. Because they're young? Yeah. Or scarce out there. Exactly! Although his war toy is probably leaving too. See, how considerate is that? Though, like, their entire purpose is not gone, but... Well, she's in charge now, so what does it matter? Oh, that means him. Yeah, so her true colors are showing now.
Hey, man.
So they really treat us like a lion situation. They kick out the old or kill the old and bring in new only. Of course they would. What? Okay. Oh. 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 Okay.
なんだ美形ではないか名は役職は
She just picks random guys. You're dismissing him a bit too quickly. Well, no one said that was a cutoff. They just specifically asked for people under 35. So close. Of course. Oh, wow. True.
のみがある多くの日記を見せてほしいのだ多くの日記は多く
これは多くはいつ頃の日記を
の局に命ぜられて 私が子供の頃牢屋がいつも言ってくらい
Olden days, it's only been 80 years.
ふと思うことがあるだったのかと皆家業を
See, she's smart.
表向きの文章だまるでこの国には男しかおらぬようじゃ状況を把握するため明確な記録などこのような歌詞
Ooh, I love it. She wants to abolish almost everything.
意味の分けておりましたのにくださらなんだ。この名にせよと仰せいずれこの国は滅という意味で。
ような男であった。
I knew it. I was like, credit to Ōoku, wouldn't that be a woman?
なるほど。これを読めばことの
I can't believe it's hidden from them though. So this was a very long episode. I knew it would be. I don't know if the rest are going to be over an hour long, but this was a very long episode. Showed a lot of details, a lot of things going on, and I really liked the guy who I thought was the main character. Turns out wasn't. So I did think this story was going to be about the main guy we saw in the beginning with the Shogun. It surprised me that he actually wasn't the main character, although I did think, well, actually, of course, the Shogun is the main character. It's about her, because she is living in a world where men are scarce. So I did think that maybe it'd be her and him together, figuring out things as they go along in the show, both being new to the Ōoku and everything. But it turns out no. And now she's actually my favorite character. She's literally doing things that I, in a sense, have always, when I see characters with power, emperors, empresses, all that, and I know for a fact that because they have the power, they can change things, but they just don't do it for whatever reason, or because regulations forbid them from doing so. This shogun does not care. She got there and she's like, no, things are gonna change. This whole killing the man after they sleep with me because I'm a virgin, that's stupid. We're not doing that. Buying all the expensive fabrics and such just to look pretty, that's stupid. We're not gonna do that. We barely have any money as it is. We're not gonna spend it on material things. Having all these men just locked away from other women that might actually need them in order to, rebuild the population. They're being hogged here for no good reason. She got the youngest and most eligible men and dismissed them because she knew they would have a greater purpose outside than they would inside. Not to mention, I think that if or when she's made aware, I don't know if she already is, if she's made aware that there is a bunch of violations happening between the men, particularly with newcomers, I feel she would also abolish that. She is challenging things that these older men and some of the older women refuse to. She's challenging customs that all these old men refuse to relent on, and she does not care. Very much knows she's in charge, and whatever she says goes. I've also always wanted, particularly an emperor, to dismiss concubines because, well, mainly for quote-unquote, I guess, true love or whatever. Like, they love this particular woman, they only want her. So if they were to have concubines or were forced to get them, they would just dismiss them because they only want one person. So she is in a sense doing that, not because she's in love with one man in particular, but because she knows there's no point in having that many men. She's like, you know what, no, like, I know it's against custom, but no, there's no point in having these men here. Not to mention, she's not afraid to dismiss people that go against what she thinks is right. With good reason, though. Like, when she asked that woman to, get me a very simple outfit, and she's like, you know what, I did get you a very simple outfit. There's nothing more I could do. It could not be any less extravagant because it still has to be. She did not tolerate that. She's like, you know what, no, we barely have money. You're not gonna waste it on these fancy, expensive fabrics when simple fabrics work just fine. And with regards to her attendant, Hashimichi, I think that's her name, or something like that, I knew there was something on with her. I knew her face couldn't always look like that. I was like, no, she's hiding something. She's gonna turn eventually. I thought maybe she's gonna turn on the Shogun, but it turns out no. She isn't as innocent, or I guess as airheaded as you might think. She showed her true colors to Fujinari. She's like, it's custom actually to dismiss all the previous attendants from the previous Shogun, but yet my lady hasn't. She's really about going against the grain. She really does not want to conform to the ways of the Ōoku. And of course, as comparisons go, I have quite a few. The first and foremost being, in a sense, this series is based in ancient Japan specifically, but in general it's based in an ancient Asian society. It reminds me of quite a few, which is, of course, Women of the Inner Palace because of the political intrigue and everything, and the Apothecary Diaries. Because again, all those have to deal with particularly one person in power, surrounded by a bunch of, particularly just one gender, with the specific role of just sleeping with them, which is all the concubines. The fact that it's a female in charge, that reminds me of quite a few isekai animes, where particularly it's a matriarchal society and not a patriarchal society. So that reminds me of that. Of course, as always, I have to input them in. It's not because necessarily I'm specifically looking for things that are like, oh, it reminds me of this. No, it's literally just how it is. I'm like, oh, it reminds me of this. Specifically in this case, the secret swain or secret swan, however you say it. Two comparisons really. But when it was found out that after this particular male would sleep with the female shogun, who actually still in a patriarchal viewpoint would be a virgin, when he would sleep with her and take her virginity, due to the defiling of her body in that sense, the only atonement he could do was by his own death. So in that particular sense, it reminded me of that scene from the PS4 game Assassin's Creed Origins, because in that game, it's particularly known that if a man were to sleep with Queen Cleopatra, he would have to be killed the next day. They didn't really say why, just that they just know that what happens if you sleep with her. So the whole sleep with me and you die the next morning, that reminded me of that game. And also the fact that he died, but didn't really die. It reminded me of a sentence of a bookworm, particularly because a similar thing happens. Though I haven't seen the anime get to this point yet because I've only seen the first 2 episodes of season 2. But I do know that at some point, Mine ceases to be Mine, and Mine is legally declared dead, and she's then given a brand new persona. Basically like Within Protection. She's given a new name, a new family, a new background, everything. She's no longer Mine. She has now become Rosen Mine due to her having to be adopted by a noble family. She went from being from a okay-ish financially stable family to a super rich family. But due to the ways of their society, the nobles could not adopt a commoner child. I'm assuming that's just not how it's done. So of course they had to make this whole entire persona, this whole entire new person for Mine to become in order for her to be adopted into this new family while the old her is dead. And since he was given a brand new name and a brand new backstory, it reminded me of that. And I find it to the manga and anime series that I almost always get a chance to reference. Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. And of course it's because when he dies, he does not die. But everybody else is led to believe that he died. And that of course reminds me of when His Majesty kills Sarafi. Everybody in the human realm that knows that the most recent sacrifice was sent to the Beast Kingdom. In everybody's mind she's dead. Nobody thinks she's alive. Even her old childhood friend thinks she's dead because that's just how it's believed. It's always been that when a sacrifice is sent to the Beast Kingdom, she's killed. But it turns out that His Majesty has actually been letting the sacrifices go in secret. So while everybody thinks that they were eaten by His Majesty, they weren't. So while everybody in the inner chambers believes that he died, he in fact hasn't and was allowed to go and be with the woman he actually loves. Another comparison with those two actually also comes from Ribbon of the Inner Palace, because while he claims to love Onobu, it's known that he frequently beds a bunch of women. Not necessarily because he particularly seeks them out, but because they seek him out. And he of course can't say no. He's like, how can I say no? And they're begging me to give them a purpose by getting them pregnant, then become mothers, and then finally having a purpose in life. Which frankly I believe is sad, and it's actually kind of still true today. A lot of women do still think that they cannot fully live their lives until they have a kid. Which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that it isn't the only thing, and there are other options. I know particularly in this timeline and this specific show, due to the fact that they're poor and everything, there really isn't much else they can do. Being a mother and just raising a child would be basically the goal for them. But the point of that being is the fact that since he claims to love Onobu, but yet he still sleeps with all these other women, it reminds me of the Summer King in Raven of the Inner Palace, because though he claims to love the Winter King, which I believe turns out to be the first Raven consort, he still sleeps with his concubines and has kids with them and lives his life to the fullest, while she is sitting there waiting for him to come see her, but he never does. So that reminds me of that, because like I said, he sees a bunch of women, though he claims to love Onobu, but also the fact that Onobu has rejected her father's request for her to get married. She's like, no, I don't want anybody else but him. And she was literally just faking every illness, like, oh dad, I have a headache, I'm not feeling too good, my stomach hurts, I can't meet anybody. And he's basically like, girl, I'm a medicine man, you can't fool me, just come and see who's waiting for you. And it turns out it was the man she was waiting for. But I was surprised though that he subverted the trope of sleeping with the woman you love before leaving, like quote unquote, I guess, to battle. Because he even said it like, oh, I wish I had slept with her before I left. And I was like, yeah, why didn't you? I was surprised. And also the fact that one where he kissed the young male assistant that he had, he was like, I'm sorry, Onobu, and he kissed him. And I was like, okay, like, you're still kissing this man. I know circumstances being what they are, but still, it's like you're kissing the man. Like, okay, so much for love. And then the fact that, which is surprising, he asked to call the shogun by another woman's name. And it's like, okay, it's like, I guess, like, spiritually or whatever, or mentally, it's sweet. But still, I'm like, you're still betraying Onobu, even though, like, it's your duty. He did choose to go there, but it's still, now that he's there, it's his duty to fulfill whatever is asked of him. And so I'm like, okay, you love her, and yet you're still, like, doing all these things of other people. So it's funny in that sense. He is commendable though, because he was thinking of his older sister when he left. He really was thinking of his family and trying to help them out when he left to the inner chambers. And although it hurt him because he had to leave Onobu, he knew he had to do this in order for his family to live a better life, knowing that he would probably never see her again. And yeah, once again, it was kind of sweet that in his last night that would be full of passion with the shogun, that he wished to imagine it was Onobu instead of her. And also commend him on the fact that she wasn't offended at all. She understood. She was like, okay, everybody listen to like those 4 creeps in the room. Nobody can request anything in these bedchambers, but since he's dying, like, who am I to refuse him? And I'm like, thank God she's a sensible leader and isn't a stickler for the rules. She knows where her priorities lie, and she's not gonna let these old customs get in the way of that. Oh, and also in I suppose a more funnier sense, the fact that she was like the initiator and she was like on top of him, it reminded me of that scene from The Remarried Empress when it was Emperor Heinrich and Empress Navier's first night, and she was the instigator and she was on top of him, and I was like, okay, that reminds me of that. That was like a funny like comparison to do. I was like, oh, that's I don't see that often. She really is a considerate person, not necessarily holding on to the fact that this is the first man, presumably, that she's ever slept with. One would assume or maybe think, well, first of all, of course, since he had to die, of course she couldn't keep him around. But at the very least, I would have assumed that maybe she would have been at least somewhat possessive of him and not wanting him to go to Onobu, like, maybe get him married off somebody else. But the fact that she gave him an entirely new title and name and everything and allowed him to go marry the woman that he actually loved, I was like, that's actually very considerate and very nice of her on her part. I can't say I'm surprised that sexual assault is very prominent in there, because for one, you have a lot of sexually repressed, quote-unquote beautiful men surrounded by just other men, and leaving all that sexual frustration around with really no outlet. Unless it's consensual, for the most part, it will be forced, and it's sadly just essentially accepted that this is what happens. And the fact that who I thought was the main character, whose name I actually don't remember, when he was approached by those 3 men, and 2 of them held him down, and the 3rd one was like, you can't move if 2 men are holding you down. I was like, oh no, I think I know what's gonna happen. And when they tried to do something, and he actually fought back, and he was declared like a hero from all the other men, like, oh my god, I can't believe he fought back. I was like, that's sad and dark. Sad because it just happens in people, and they're more or less forced to accept that they might be sexually assaulted. Sad because of that, but also dark because he was literally willing to kill himself in order to not have to go through that if they dared to try anything with him again. And the fact that they had no remorse at all for what they did. The only reason they felt any type of way about it was because 1, they were confronted by him, and 2, because he ended up going up in status. And of course, well, you're fucked up if like this guy you tried to literally rape is now above you in rank, and now you're like, oh shit, I'm sorry I almost did that to you. It's like, no, he could kill you if he wanted to, and nobody would even question it. Also with regards to the fact that they say they do this to a lot of newcomers, and essentially for the most part it's non-consensual. Though it's not stated, I just know that the assistant that he had, considering how pretty he looked and docile and innocent, I just know he's probably been violated by a few of those men. In a sense, there really is no way around it. He doesn't look like he's the fighting type, and I'm like, that's sad that they all have to go through that. And actually, not surprisingly, there was quite a few, if not many, homosexual men back in those times. And if anything, in most ancient cultures, from what I know, it was not necessarily outright accepted. It was just a known fact that sometimes men would sleep with men. But I believe it wasn't until necessarily Christianity came into play, that's when it was more or less seen as a bad thing and seen as something like super shameful that should be hidden and not talked about, not seen or anything like that. Being gay essentially became like a death sentence, and they were no longer to be as expressive as they were before, at least from what I know. Again, the Shogun is my favorite. I strive to be like her. We also are very like-minded, where if I ask a question, she also seemed to ask it, and I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. But also I think it helps by the fact that she's also new to the inner chambers, so of course a lot of the questions that I have, she would have, because if it was the older woman in the beginning, unless that was a shot of her in the future and then it goes back to the past from the episode that we saw, that's her when she was younger, and then right in the beginning it was her when she was much older. If it started off with her being that young 7-year-old girl and becoming the Shogun when she's older, there would be no point in her asking any of these questions that this Shogun has, because she would already know them. She wouldn't question it, which is actually why I think it makes a good point as to why it's necessary for new blood to be brought in when it comes to rulers. Because when you have one that's more or less ancestral or lineage based, you tend to have a lot of people that do not necessarily challenge or question things, because that's just the way things are. You don't question customs that you've done since you were young, because all the things are normal. You don't question what you have been taught is normal. If you have to have 800 concubines You're gonna have them. If you have to dismiss these people, you're gonna dismiss them. You don't question that because that's what you have been raised to believe. But when you bring somebody new into this kind of establishment, they are bound to question things. They are bound to want more of a modernized and different kind of change than the others would. Especially with this shogun, she was confused by many things. She was like, why spend money on these fabrics when we don't have a lot of money to spend? She also questioned the fact that why does she have to wear these outfits? Why does she have to wear the uncomfortable type of outfit style that they wear? She's like, I can barely walk in this thing, like it's uncomfortable. Why have all these men when there's a scarcity of men outside? Why does she have to dress like a man to meet this foreigner? Even the guy she asked, why can't I talk to him directly? And he's like, I don't know. They don't know, but they don't bother to question it, but they don't know the reasoning. Why kill a man for sleeping with me? Like all these things that probably the previous younger shogun, had she grown up, she would not have questioned. This is why there is never any change. People just accept things as they are and they never feel like changing it. Cause like that's just the way things are. Even if we don't necessarily know why specifically this rule is in place, you're just like, that's just the rule and that's it. They never bother to question it. So it's a good thing that she's here now to question things that need to be questioned. She really is a breath of fresh air in that place, and I do believe she will bring a lot of change, and I'm actually very excited to see how she becomes, because I want to say honestly, out of all of the female characters that I've ever seen in an anime series, and hopefully I'm not speaking too like soon about this, I know this is the first episode, though it was like over an hour long, so basically almost pretty much 3 episodes in my book, because most episodes are like 20 minutes, so like 3 20-minute episodes, it's over an hour, so I think she's my favorite female lead ever. She sees things very critically and she genuinely wants change. And she will not tolerate anybody who will not back her in wanting change. Also the fact that she seemingly comes from a more humble upbringing than most. Where most of these men are from noble, prominent families, she is from what Fujinari kept calling country hicks. They're from the countryside. They're not nobles. Or at the very least, I believe the shogun was not a very high noble. This is why she's so important to the story. She has to be there for there to be change. And another note, I don't know if it's just me, but 80 years to me doesn't necessarily seem like a super long time for them to just not know that there used to be a whole lot of men around. At the very least, we know that the scribe was around since the time of the Great Purge, I guess you could call it. And first of all, he's 97 years old. He survived whatever illness was affecting the men before. It's been 80 years since then. He's 97. If my math is right, though probably not, he was 17. He was still young and it could have affected him, yet somehow it didn't. But he knows how it used to be back then. But yet somehow nobody that is now in their early 20s or whatever, they don't know there used to be a lot of men. They don't know that this wasn't the norm. And the shogun questions that, like, why is it that you have to have a male name? And why is it when you look at these books, it's basically as if only men existed? Which also makes a good point where when it comes to history, I do believe that we do tend to learn more about the men than the women. Men are vastly more talked about than women, really. If anything, I've only ever learned more about female inventors and prominent female figures from movies like Hidden Figures and TikTok videos about these particular women in STEM, in NASA, all that. Like, that's particularly where I learned it. I didn't necessarily learn about them in school. It also depends on where you're from. But you do most likely tend to learn more about men than women. So it makes sense why she would think, why does it seem like there was only men before? And I was like, no, yeah, you're right. That's pretty accurate. If you were to look at it that way, it does seem like there would only be men around. Though I do wonder, what's the purpose of hiding the fact that there used to be more men? There seems to be some hidden reason for why they don't necessarily want people to know that there used to be an abundance of men before. But also, the illness that was so rampant before, what happened to it? Because I assumed it was still around. But now apparently the men are just weaker in constitution than before, and they can very easily get sick if they work too hard. So when exactly did the red rash of death go away? Or when did it become more mild and it just made them get like super sick sometimes? Like, is it still around? Is it not? What caused it in the first place? Was it the mushroom or was it the bear? I thought the bear had rabies, but I don't know. You know, for a second, I was like, wait, maybe this shogun is the little girl from the beginning whose brothers and dad passed away. But I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense. She'd be like over 80. She wouldn't be like in her early 20s. I'm like, okay, never mind. But for a second, I was like, oh, you know, in the country, they look like they live in the countryside. And I was like, maybe that's her. I'm like, oh no, wait, that can't be her. Unless she has eternal youth, like the Chancellor does in the most heretical Last Boss Queen from Villain is a Savior. I love her mind. I just love it. One slight more critique about what I saw in this episode was both interesting but also kind of like sketchy in a sense, is that so she slept with the first main guy And then it turns out that she then became a bit more promiscuous in her dalliances later on, which actually good for her now that I think about it. If the fact that the men had to be around in her bedchamber when she slept with the man, it makes sense now as to why she refused to sleep with men in her bedchamber. She would just find any other room to sleep with them in but her bedchamber because she did not want to be listened in on, which makes sense. That's actually also historically accurate too. I don't know for Japan, but I do know in many European kingdoms before, it was customary that at the very least for their wedding night that there would be an audience to watch the couple consummate the marriage. That would be the only way that the marriage would be legally binding at that point. It would be solidified. And of course, since they know people could probably lie that, oh yeah, we slept together, they made sure that they would have an audience so that there would be eyewitness testimony that they did in fact consummate the marriage. Which is never not disturbing or uncomfortable, and that's just weird and, gods. I mean, I say that, but yet... people do that willingly now. In a sense, OF. In another sense, you know, the hub. But at least in those cases, those people, at least for the most part, they do allow themselves to be watched by others, be it in person or in film. But these royals didn't have a choice. They had to be this way. Which, if anything, I'm surprised she wasn't able to fight against. She fought against a lot of other customs, and yet she could not fight against this one custom. Although I guess maybe, you know, pick and choose your battles. And this is probably like the one thing that they would not budge on. You know, we may maybe let you let go of like 50 men, but we will not let you get away with our one enjoyment in this life, which is listening in on your first night with the men. And I was like, well, you know, you can't win them all. I know in a sense it's probably not as maybe serious looking as it is, but the shogun also doesn't necessarily seem to ask for consent either, excluding the first man. The man in the courtyard that she found, and she grabbed him from the collar and she pulled him into the bushes, and she's like, oh, let's be quick, I don't have much time. It's like, okay, maybe he was into it, but like, you didn't ask, you just went for it. And then she seemed to make a habit of it. Apparently she doesn't even vet who these guys are. She just hears a man walking by and she's like, I'm gonna snatch him, and she snatched this guy, and it was the former manager of the pages. She was like, oh my god, it's you, you're handsome, like, what are you doing here? And I was like, okay, so that just proves that she didn't know who she was pulling in. She just pulled in whoever was walking by. And secondly, she just didn't care. She was like, be quiet, and then she started touching him, and I was like, okay, these people really have no chance to say no, apparently. Those two things are the only things though that I was like put off by. I was like, okay, it's like, that's disturbing to say the least. And again, I also love her assistant. The fact that when I thought she would actually be terrified of Fujinari, especially because he put his name between her legs, I was like, okay. She instead turned the table and she was like, you know, it's customary for her to dismiss you. But she hasn't. Either we dismiss you or we dismiss those 50 men. So, you know, choose. So instead of being terrified by the fact that maybe she would get assaulted by this man, she decided to go on the offensive and make him be scared of her. Because regardless of her position of assistant or whatever, she's still essentially the shogun's right-hand woman. If you do anything against her, I'm pretty sure she would have personally chopped Fujinari's head off. There's no way you could meet with all 3,000 of the men that were supposedly in the inner chambers. But even though you later found out that it was actually 800, there's still really no way she would be able to meet all 800 men. So of course, in that sense, being surrounded by all these like beautiful men and everything, and well, I mean, you know, really no other outlet, there is bound to be a lot of same-sex relationships going on in the inner chambers. I do like the beautification of the men though. I think actually that's just particularly what I like, I guess. The beautiful men type. The eyeshadow thing like that, like, oh, like, that looks nice. And then just like having like long hair, soft features in the face. Like, they're still men, but they're just very pretty. So I was like, okay, you know, like, that's actually why I thought that when the shogun initially saw all the 50 men that she called for, I thought she was for once astonished by their beauty. Nope. She was astonished by the fact that they actually took into account what she had said, and they were all wearing simple black kimonos. Okay, that makes more sense. I was like, she couldn't be that easily swayed already from like how she was before. Like, no, she was not. She was still very much in the mindset of like, oh, finally we're being frugal. Like, which also, it's a good quality of her. She truly does care for her people. She wants to make life better for her people. So, of course, she's gonna try and do whatever she can. Also, anybody else get like evil-ish vibes maybe from the old man? I don't know if it's because his eyes look black for a majority of the time, or maybe he's just had that look on his face because you're like, oh, like, finally, a fresh new shogun is here. She's gonna read this book, and finally, she's gonna know what happened before. And maybe she'll try to do something that maybe could change course. I do feel for the men, though, that were dismissed. She, of course, had the very best of intentions, but the fact that these men, for the most part, I guess, willingly came to the inner chambers to try to live a more lavish lifestyle than probably the ones they had before, their literal sole purpose of just living in the inner chambers was now gone. They now had to go outside into the real world and try to find a woman to marry and have a family, when essentially they just thought they wouldn't have to worry about that. they would just live their life in luxury here. Although at the very least, this would at least exempt those 50 men from being sexually assaulted. So now I'm curious, who's the actual main guy? Is there an actual main guy, or is it just her? Because considering the fact that she still has a lot of male concubines, like, will there actually be a main guy, or just whoever happens to catch her eye every other episode? Well, now I think I've pretty much said everything that I want to say about this episode. So now having said all that, I can't wait to see what happens in the next episode.